Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the New Horizon, watching the stars stretch into lines as they prepared for humanity's first jump to another star system. It was a big day for Earth. After 200 years of dreaming about the stars, humans had finally built a ship that could travel faster than light. "Sam, are you ready with the coordinates?" Jake asked his engineer, a young man named Sam Rodriguez who had worked on the new warp drive for 5 years. "Almost ready, Captain," Sam said, checking his numbers one more time. The jump to Kepler 442 should take them to a nice empty spot where they could test their systems. Sam typed in the coordinates, double-checking each number. Well, he thought he double-checked them. Dr. Lisa Carter stood next to communications. Officer Amy Walsh, both women excited about the possibility of finding new life in space. Lisa had spent her whole career studying biology, hoping that one day she might meet aliens. Amy had learned 12 Earth languages and was ready to try talking to whatever they might find. Commander Ryan Blake watched from his security station. As the ship's military officer, he was more worried about what might go wrong. Space was big and unknown, and Ryan liked to be prepared for trouble. "Coordinates locked in," Sam announced. "Ready for jump." Jake took a deep breath. "This is it, people. Humanity's first step into the galaxy. Take us out, Sam." Sam hit the button. The stars disappeared, and everything went white. When the light faded, they expected to see empty space and a distant star. Instead, they found themselves inside what looked like a giant metal cave. Warning lights flashed everywhere, and alien voices started shouting in languages nobody had ever heard. "Where are we?" Jake asked, but nobody had an answer. Through the front window, they could see they were sitting in some kind of huge docking bay. The ceiling was so high they could barely see it, and the walls stretched out farther than their sensors could measure. Strange ships of all shapes and sizes were parked in neat rows, some as small as cars and others as big as city blocks. "Captain," Amy said, her voice shaking, "I'm getting radio signals. Lots of them. And they're not from Earth." Before anyone could respond, a door opened in the wall next to them. A figure walked out, and it definitely was not human. It had blue skin, 4 arms, and looked very, very tired. The alien walked up to their ship and knocked on the hull like someone knocking on a front door. When nobody answered, it knocked again, harder this time. Then it pulled out what looked like a megaphone and started talking. Amy's computer tried to translate, but the result was confusing. "Welcome. Greetings. Please exit. Standard procedure. Paperwork. Oh no, not again." "I think it wants us to come out," Lisa said. "Jake made the decision that would change humanity forever. Open the airlock. Let's go meet our first alien." The 5 humans put on their spacesuits and walked outside. The alien was waiting for them, holding a tablet and looking like someone who had done this job way too many times. The alien saw them and let out a long, tired sigh. It pressed a button on its tablet, and a voice came out speaking broken English. "Hello, new species. Welcome to Galaxy. Please do not be excited. This happens all the time. I am Security Chief Morgeth Blint. You are in Administrative Hub Kappa 7. Please follow me for processing." Jake stepped forward, trying to look important. "I am Captain Jake Morrison of the Earth ship New Horizon. We come in peace, seeking friendship and knowledge among the stars." Morgeth held up one of his 4 hands. Yes, peace and friendship. Very nice. Here is pamphlet." He handed Jake a small booklet with pictures of smiling aliens and text that said, "Welcome to the galaxy. Everything you need to know but were afraid to ask. We are the first humans to leave our solar system. Jake continued. This is a historic moment for our species. Species number 49,847, Morgeth said, checking his tablet. Discovered faster than light travel on... He looked at them again. What year is it for you? 2187, Amy answered. Right. 2187, standard development timeline. Nothing unusual. Please come along for standard first contact processing. Try not to touch anything expensive. Dr. Carter could not believe what she was hearing. Wait, you mean there are almost 50,000 other intelligent species? 50,236 as of last week, Morgeth corrected. New species evolve, discover space travel, join empire, and then usually become very boring. It is natural progression. Please follow yellow line on floor. They walked through corridors that seemed to go on forever. Other aliens passed by, but none of them seemed interested in the humans. A few glanced at them the way someone might look at a new type of sandwich, mildly curious but not really impressed. How big is this empire? Ryan asked. Currently 400,000 star systems, Morgeth replied without looking back. 12,000 years old, very stable. Very boring. Sometimes new species get excited about joining, but excitement usually fades quickly when they realize how much paperwork is involved. They arrived at an office that looked exactly like a government office on Earth, except everything was 3 times too big, and the chairs had extra arms for species that needed them. Behind a desk sat another alien. This one with green skin and tentacles instead of hair. A nameplate on the desk said, Inspector Zephlin Quiddle. Another new species, Inspector Quiddle asked, not looking up from her computer. Humans from Sol system, Morgeth replied. Standard first contact scenario, accidental arrival, probably navigation error. Sam turned red. His navigation error had led them here instead of empty space. Inspector Quiddle finally looked at them. Oh, bipedal mammals. How original. Let me guess. You discovered fire, then agriculture, then industry, then space flight. Probably took you about 10,000 years total. How did you know that? Lisa asked. Because it always happens the same way, Quiddle sighed. Evolution is surprisingly predictable. Please sit down. We need to process your species for inclusion in the Galactic Empire. She pulled out a stack of forms that was about 6 inches thick. First, we need basic information about your home world. Then medical examinations to make sure you are not carrying any dangerous diseases. Then psychological evaluation to determine your species' threat level. Then citizenship orientation video should only take about 8 hours. Jake looked at his crew. This was not how he had imagined first contact would go. In all the movies and books, meeting aliens was either terrifying or wonderful. Nobody had ever imagined it would be boring. 8 hours? Amy asked. Standard processing time, Quiddle confirmed. Could be longer if there are complications. Last week we had a silicon-based species that needed special forms. Took 12 hours just to figure out how to spell their name. She handed them each a clipboard with forms. Please fill these out in black ink only. Print clearly. Do not leave any blanks. If a question does not apply to your species, write not applicable rather than leaving it empty. Lisa looked at her form. The first question was species name. The second was home planet classification. The third was average individual intelligence level on scale of 1 to 847. What's the highest intelligence level? She asked. The Vorthan Collective rates about 830, Quiddle said. They can predict the future with 94% accuracy. Very useful for tax planning. What about humans? Quiddle looked at them for a moment. Based on the fact that you arrived here, By accident, probably around 23. Commander Blake was reading question 47. Has your species ever successfully prevented its own extinction? He checked the no box. Question 63 asked, does your species consider itself special or unique? Jake stared at that one for a long time before reluctantly checking yes. As they filled out the forms, more aliens came and went from the office. None of them seemed interested in the humans. A few made comments in their own languages that Amy's computer translated as things like, another batch of newcomers, and hope they are not as chatty as the last ones. After 2 hours of paperwork, Inspector Quiddle collected their forms and started typing information into her computer. Congratulations, she said in a flat voice. Your species has been accepted into the Galactic Empire with Protectorate status. Level 9. This grants you limited trading rights, 1 embassy location, and protection from hostile alien species. Please note that Level 9 is the starting level for all new species. Advancement to higher levels requires proof of significant cultural, technological, or military contribution to the Empire. What's the highest level? Jake asked. Level 1. Currently, held by 12 species who helped found the Empire 12,000 years ago. Last species to advance from Level 9 was the Kelmorians, 3,000 years ago. They invented a new type of mathematics. Ryan did some quick math in his head. So, in 9,000 years, only 1 species has managed to advance? Correct. Most species find Level 9 quite comfortable. You get all the benefits of galactic citizenship without the responsibilities of higher levels. Many species prefer it that way. She handed Jake a datapad. Here are your options. You may return to your homeworld with this basic replicator, technology and star charts showing safe travel routes. Or you may remain here and attempt to advance your species status through contribution to Imperial society. Jake looked at his crew. They had come to the stars expecting to be explorers and discoverers. 3 days later, Jake Morrison sat in what the aliens called a newcomer orientation room, watching the most boring video he had ever seen in his life. The narrator was a purple alien with too many eyes who spoke in a voice that could put anyone to sleep. Welcome to the Galactic Empire, the voice droned on. For your safety and the safety of others, please observe all posted regulations. Violation of Imperial law may result in fines, imprisonment, or deportation to your homeworld. Dr. Lisa Carter was trying to stay awake in her chair next to him. Sam Rodriguez had given up and was openly napping. Only Amy Walsh was still taking notes, though she looked like she might cry from boredom. The video had been playing for 4 hours. So far, they had learned about tax codes, import regulations, and the proper way to file a complaint with the Imperial bureaucracy. They still had 2 hours left. This is worse than watching paint dry, Lisa whispered. At least paint drying ends, eventually, Jake whispered back. When the video finally finished, Inspector Quiddle came back into the room carrying more paperwork. She looked at Sam, who was still asleep, and poked him with a long stick she kept for this purpose. Wake up! Time for medical examinations. The medical center was run by a doctor who looked like a giant spider wearing glasses. Dr. Klexvin had been examining new species for 200 years and found the work incredibly repetitive. Another carbon-based mammalian species, Dr. Klexvin, muttered while scanning Lisa with a device that hummed and beeped. Bilateral symmetry, internal skeleton, oxygen breathing. How wonderfully ordinary. Is that bad? Lisa asked. Not bad, just boring. Do you know how many species have exactly your body plan? 4,731. You are not even in the top 10 for most unusual. The bloblings from Sector 12 can reshape their entire body structure. Now that was interesting. Dr. Klexavin finished the scan and made notes on his computer. Perfectly healthy, perfectly normal, perfectly predictable. No exotic diseases, no unusual adaptations, no special abilities. You will fit right in with all the other ordinary species. After medical exams came psychological evaluation. Dr. Yextara was a floating jellyfish creature who specialized in determining how dangerous new species might be. Please look at this image and tell me what you see, Dr. Yextara said, showing Jake a picture that looked like random colored dots. I see dots, Jake answered honestly. Non-aggressive response, practical thinking, no signs of megalomania or conquest fantasies. She made a note. How does your species typically respond to conflict? We try to talk first, fight if we have to, Jake replied. Standard response pattern 7 alpha. Seen it 43,000 times. More notes. Do you believe your species is destined to rule the galaxy? No, we just want to explore and learn. Curiosity-driven expansion, very common in younger species, usually fades within 50 years of galactic contact. She looked up at Jake with what might have been sympathy. I am afraid your species poses no threat to Imperial security. You will be classified as harmless and boring. While Jake dealt with the psychologist, Amy was having her own problems in the cultural assessment office. The evaluator was an alien who looked like a walking flower with arms. Please demonstrate your species' greatest cultural achievement, the evaluator said. Amy thought for a moment, then pulled out her tablet and played a recording of Beethoven's Ninth Symphony. She watched the alien's face, hoping for some sign of appreciation. The alien listened for 30 seconds, then held up a hand to stop the music. Harmonic progression based on mathematical relationships. Emotional manipulation through controlled audio frequencies. Standard artistic development pattern for auditory-capable species. But this is Beethoven, Amy protested, one of our greatest composers. Yes, very nice. Species number 12847 produced similar work 3,000 years ago. Species number 23,156 made almost identical music just last century. Artistic evolution follows predictable patterns across all species. The alien made notes on his computer. Cultural evaluation. Typical developing species with standard artistic expression. No unique contributions identified. Amy felt her heart sink. Everything that made humans special seemed ordinary to these aliens. Meanwhile, Sam was in the technology assessment lab trying to explain human engineering to a robot that was clearly smarter than every human who had ever lived. This is our warp drive, Sam said, showing holographic images of the New Horizons engine. We spent 50 years developing it. The robot, who called himself Unit 7743, examined the data for exactly 3 seconds. Primitive but functional. Efficiency rating of 0.02%. Standard early-stage faster-than-light technology. Every species developed something similar within their first century of space travel. But we built this ourselves, Sam said. Nobody helped us. Of course, help is not provided to developing species. Independence is important for psychological development. However, your technology is approximately 12,000 years behind current Imperial standards. Unit 7743 showed Sam a hologram of an Imperial ship engine. It was smaller than a human fist, but could power a ship the size of a city. Current efficiency rating, 94.7%. We could upgrade your vessel, but regulations require that protectorate species develop their own technology to level 5 before receiving Imperial assistance. How long does that usually take? Sam asked. For species starting at your level? Approximately 800 to 1,000 years. Sam stared at the tiny engine. Everything he had worked on his entire life was like comparing a stone axe to a laser cutter. By the end of the day, all 4 humans were thoroughly depressed. They met back in their assigned quarters, which were nice enough but clearly designed for temporary stays by unimportant visitors. Well, that was humbling, Jake said, flopping down on a chair that was slightly too big for him. They have 43,000 species more advanced than us, Lisa said. 43,000, and that's just the ones they've bothered to count. Amy was looking through the cultural database on her tablet. I found Earth music in here. It's filed under primitive but charming folk traditions, right next to species that communicate by changing colors and species that sing with their entire bodies. My warp drive is apparently a decent first attempt, Sam added. The robot suggested I might want to take some basic engineering classes. Jake looked around at his dejected crew. So what do we do now? We could go home, Lisa suggested. Take the replicator technology and the star charts. Earth would be grateful. We could live as heroes. Heroes who discovered that humanity is completely ordinary in a galaxy full of extraordinary species, Amy pointed out. They sat in silence for a while, each lost in their own thoughts. Through their window, they could see aliens going about their daily business. Workers, students, families, all living lives that were probably 1,000 times more interesting than anything happening on Earth. A knock on their door interrupted their brooding. Sam opened it to find Morgeth Blint standing outside with a bottle of something that glowed purple. Thought you might need this, the security chief said, holding up the bottle. Every new species goes through the same thing. Reality shock, we call it. Discovering that you are not special is always difficult. He came inside and poured the glowing liquid into glasses. It tasted like electricity mixed with fruit juice. Is it always this depressing? Jake asked. Usually worse, Morgeth replied. Most species either become completely discouraged and go home, or become obsessed with advancing their status and spend centuries trying to impress us. What about the ones that succeed? Lisa asked. Morgeth thought for a moment. The Kelmorians succeeded because they approached old problems in completely new ways. They did not try to build better technology or create more beautiful art. They changed how we think about mathematics itself. But we don't know anything that you don't already. No, Sam protested. Maybe, Morgeth said. Or maybe you know things we have forgotten. He stood up to leave, then paused at the door. Want some advice? Stop trying to impress us. We have seen everything impressive. Instead, try to surprise us. We have not been surprised in a very long time. After he left, the humans sat quietly, drinking the glowing liquid, which was making them feel slightly better about everything. What did he mean about surprising them? Amy wondered. Jake was thinking about something he had noticed during their tours. Did you see how tired everyone looks? Not just tired from work, but tired from existing. They have solved all their problems, Lisa said slowly. No war, no poverty, no disease, no conflict. Perfect civilization, but also perfectly boring, Sam added. Everything is efficient and orderly and predictable. Amy pulled up the cultural database again. Look at this. In the last 1,000 years, there have been only 12 new art forms created empire-wide. 12, in a civilization with 50,000 species. They have everything they could want, Jake said, but they have nothing to look forward to. An idea was starting to form in his mind. Maybe Morgeth was right. Maybe humans could not compete with imperial technology or culture or intelligence. But maybe they had something else, something the Empire had lost in 12,000 years of success. Tomorrow we start over, Jake announced. We stop trying to prove we are advanced. Instead, we find out what happens when you put humans in a place where everything is already perfect. The next morning, Jake Morrison made a decision that would change everything. Instead of trying to impress the aliens with human achievements, he decided to do something completely different. He decided to be curious about their achievements. Good morning, Jake said cheerfully to Inspector Quiddle when they arrived at her office. Could you show us around? We would love to see how everything works here. Quiddle looked suspicious. Show you around? Why? Because this place is amazing, Jake said with genuine enthusiasm. We have never seen anything like it. How do you power a space station this big? How do you manage 50,000 different species? How does the artificial gravity work? Quiddle blinked her large green eyes. You want to know how things work? Of course we do, Lisa chimed in. This is incredible technology. We are like children in a candy store. For the first time since they had met her, Inspector Quiddle looked uncertain. Most new species just want to prove they are important. They do not ask about station operations. Well, we are asking, Amy said. Please? Quiddle stared at them for a long moment, then shrugged. I suppose there is no regulation against it. Very well. Follow me. Their first stop was the power center, run by an engineer named Tekvor, who looked like a blue centaur with 6 arms. He had been maintaining the station's fusion reactors for 40 years and found the work mind-numbingly routine. These reactors have been running perfectly for 60 years, Tekvor explained in a bored voice. No problems, no surprises, no challenges. Just routine maintenance and efficiency monitoring. Sam Rodriguez looked at the massive machines with wonder. How much power do they generate? Enough to supply energy to 12 billion inhabitants for a century, Tekvor replied automatically. 12 billion? Sam's eyes went wide. How many people actually live here? About 50,000. Sam did quick math in his head. So you are using less than 1% of your power capacity? Tekvor paused. Well, yes. The reactors were designed for maximum theoretical population. We have always had significant power surplus. What do you do with all the extra energy? Sam asked. Tekvor looked confused. Nothing, it just exists. Ready for use if needed. But you could do amazing things with that much extra power, Sam said excitedly. You could run experiments, power art projects, create new technologies. You have enough energy to do anything you want. Why would we want to do anything else? Tekvor asked. The reactors serve their purpose efficiently. Sam looked at the engineer like he had just said the sky was purple. Because you could do cool stuff with it? Tekvor stared at Sam for a long moment. Cool stuff? Yeah. Fun things. Interesting things just because they might be awesome. For the first time in decades, Tekvor found himself thinking about what else he could do with unlimited power. The thought made him feel strange. Happy, maybe? Their next stop was the Cultural Center, where Dr. Yentala managed the archives of 50,000 civilizations. She was a tall, thin alien with purple skin who had been cataloging culture for 300 years. This section contains the music of 12,147 species, Dr. Yentala said, gesturing to endless rows of storage units. This area has visual art from 23,456 civilizations. Over there we keep literature from 8,934 different writing traditions. Amy Walsh looked around in amazement. This is incredible. You have the cultural heritage of the entire galaxy here. Yes, Dr. Yentala agreed. All properly categorized and stored for historical reference. Do people come here to experience it? Amy asked. Experience it? Dr. Yentala looked confused. It is an archive. People come here to research specific cultural data for academic purposes. But what about for fun? Amy pressed. What about concerts or art shows or poetry readings? Fun? Dr. Yentala repeated the word like it was foreign. The archives are for preservation and study, not entertainment. Amy had an idea. Could we listen to some music? Just to hear what it sounds like? Dr. Yentala hesitated. I suppose there is no regulation against it. What would you like to hear? Surprise us, Amy said. Pick something you think is beautiful. Dr. Yentala looked completely lost. Beautiful? Beauty is subjective. The archive system does not categorize by aesthetic appeal. Then pick something you personally enjoy, Amy suggested. I do not listen to the music for enjoyment, Dr. Yentala said. I catalog it by structure, harmonic complexity, and cultural significance. Amy felt sad for the alien, surrounded by the greatest art in the galaxy, but never taking time to enjoy any of it. May I pick something? Amy asked. Dr. Yentala nodded, still looking confused. Amy chose a recording at random from species number 7,234. Strange, haunting music filled the archive center. It sounded like wind chimes made of starlight. Amy closed her eyes and smiled. That's beautiful. Dr. Yentala watched the human's face. You are experiencing pleasure from auditory input? Yes, Amy said simply. Music makes me happy. Dr. Yentala had never thought about music making anyone happy. It was just data to be stored and categorized. But watching Amy's expression, she found herself listening to the melody instead of analyzing its structure. It was beautiful. When had she stopped noticing that? Meanwhile, Jake and Lisa were in the research section with Dr. Kexanar, a scientist, who studied exotic matter. Dr. Kexanar looked like a walking tree with eyes instead of leaves. We solved the fundamental mysteries of universe structure about 4,000 years ago, Dr. Kexanar explained. Now we just refine measurements and update databases. Solved everything? Lisa asked. What about the really big questions, such as? Like, what happens inside black holes? Are there other universes? Is there life after death? What is consciousness? Dr. Kexanar looked at her strangely. Black hole interiors are mapped in detail. Other universes are theoretical, but irrelevant to this one. Life after death is a biological impossibility. Consciousness is electrical activity in neural networks. But don't you want to know more? Lisa pressed. Aren't you curious about anything? Curious? I study what needs to be studied. Research follows logical priority systems. Lisa shook her head. Where I come from, scientists study things because they want to understand them, because they are excited about discovering something new. Excited? Dr. Kexanar repeated. Why would research cause excitement? It is simply work that needs to be done. Because discovery is amazing, Lisa said with passion. Finding something nobody has ever known before is the most wonderful feeling in the universe. Even if it is not important, even if it is not useful, learning something new is its own reward. Dr. Kexnar stared at the human scientist. He tried to remember the last time he had felt excitement about his work. It might have been 200 years ago, or maybe 300. "You enjoy learning new things?" he asked slowly. "I love it," Lisa said. "That's why I became a scientist, to learn about life and the universe and everything in it." Dr. Kexnar felt something he had not experienced in centuries: curiosity. "What would you want to study if you could study anything?" "Everything," Lisa said immediately. "How do 50,000 different species live together? How do you make artificial gravity? What does music from other worlds tell us about consciousness? How do you keep a space station this big working? I want to know everything." Dr. Kexnar found himself wanting to show her everything. For the first time in 300 years, he was excited about his work. Back in the power center, Sam was still talking with Tekvor about all the things they could do with unlimited energy. They had moved from talking about experiments to discussing art projects that could light up entire star systems. "You could create auroras around planets," Sam said excitedly, "or build sculptures out of plasma, or power cities that exist just to be beautiful." Tekvor was taking notes as fast as he could write. "I never thought about using power for non-essential purposes." "The best purposes are non-essential," Sam laughed. "Essential things are boring. Fun things are what make life worth living." By the end of the day, word had spread through the station that the humans were different from other new species. They were not trying to prove anything or demand anything. They were just genuinely interested in everything around them. More aliens started stopping by to watch the humans work. They had never seen anyone get excited about routine station operations. They had never heard anyone ask questions just because they wanted to know the answers. Small crowd gathered in the cultural center when Amy started playing music from different species and dancing to the rhythms. Dr. Yentala found herself humming along, something she had never done in 300 years of archival work. In the AF research lab, Dr. Kexnar was explaining his work to Lisa, but instead of giving routine reports, he was sharing his personal theories and wild ideas. Ideas he had kept to himself for centuries because nobody else seemed interested. Tekvor had started designing power systems for Sam's crazy art projects just to see if they would work. He was having more fun than he had experienced in decades. Inspector Quiddle watched it all from her office, filing reports that she knew nobody would read. But for the first time in years, she found herself curious about what the humans would do next. The humans were not trying to change anything. They were just being themselves, curious, enthusiastic, and amazed by everything around them. But somehow, just by being human, they were starting to wake up a galaxy. 2 weeks after the humans arrived, something strange was happening on Administrative Hub Kappa 7. People were smiling. Inspector Quiddle noticed it first. She was walking through the main corridor when she saw Dr. Yentala humming while she worked. Actually humming. Quiddle had known Yentala for 60 years, and she had never heard her make any sound except official announcements. Then she saw Tekvor in the cafeteria, excitedly explaining something to a group of maintenance workers who were actually listening instead of just nodding politely. Their eyes were bright, and they were asking questions. "What is happening here?" Quiddle muttered to herself. She found her answer in the research lab, where Dr. Kexnar was showing Lisa Carter something on his computer screen. But instead of the usual boring data presentations, Kexnar was gesturing wildly with his branch-like arms, his leaf eyes practically glowing with excitement. Look at this, Kexnar was saying. I have been studying this anomaly for 200 years, but I never thought to approach it this way until you suggested it. Lisa leaned forward, genuinely interested. What did we find? The readings suggest that space itself might be more flexible than we thought. If we could manipulate local space-time in small ways, we might be able to create pockets of accelerated time or decelerated time. That's amazing, Lisa said. What could you do with that? Well, theoretically, you could create a garden where plants grow in accelerated time while the rest of the station experiences normal time. Or you could create rest areas where time moves slower, so people could relax for hours while only minutes pass outside. Lisa's eyes lit up. You could grow food faster for emergency situations, or give people more time to think about difficult problems, or create art that exists in different time streams. Kexnar had never thought about the artistic possibilities, or the practical applications. For 2 centuries, he had just been collecting data because it was his job. But talking with Lisa made him realize that discovery was not just about finding answers. It was about imagining what you could do with those answers. Down in the power center, Sam Rodriguez had become the most popular person on the station. Every day, more engineers came to hear his ideas about what they could do with their enormous energy surplus. What if we created a holographic art gallery that spans the entire station? Sam suggested to the growing crowd. Everyone could contribute designs, and we could change the displays every day. A young engineer named Vextol raised her hand. Could we make the art interactive, so people could walk through it and change it as they move? Absolutely, Sam said. Or better yet, what if the art responded to people's moods? Happy art when you are happy, calming art when you are stressed. Tekvor was frantically taking notes. We have the processing power for real-time mood analysis and artistic generation. It would be trivial to implement. Then why hasn't anyone done it before? Asked another engineer. The room went quiet. They all realized that they had the technology to create amazing things, but nobody had ever thought to use it for anything except efficient operations. Because, Tekvor said slowly, we forgot that technology could be fun. Meanwhile, Amy Walsh had started something that worried Inspector Quiddle more than anything else. She had begun organizing cultural events. It started small. Amy convinced Dr. Yentala to play music in the archives during lunch breaks, just background music while people ate. But soon, aliens were coming to the archives just to listen. They would sit quietly, experiencing art from across the galaxy. Then Amy suggested a poetry reading. Dr. Yentala found poems from 12 different species and translated them into Galactic Standard. The reading was supposed to last 1 hour, but aliens kept asking for more. It went on for 4 hours. I never knew the Crystalline Collective wrote poetry about loneliness, said a maintenance worker after hearing a particularly moving piece. I thought they were just living rocks. All intelligent species express similar emotions, Dr. Yentala explained. They just use different methods. The crystallines grow crystal formations to show feelings instead of using words. Could we see some of their crystal poetry? Amy asked. Dr. Yentala paused. We have samples in storage, but they have never been displayed. They are just archived as cultural artifacts. Well, let's display them, Amy said simply. Within a week, the Cultural Center had been transformed into an actual gallery. Crystal poetry from the crystallines sat next to sound sculptures from the harmonics. Paintings from species with 8 different types of color vision hung near philosophical texts from beings made of pure energy. For the first time in thousands of years, aliens were visiting the cultural center for pleasure instead of research. They came to experience beauty, to feel wonder, to connect with the creativity of other species. Inspector Quiddle watched all of this with growing alarm. She sent daily reports to her supervisors about the unusual activities on the station, but received only automated responses acknowledging receipt of her reports. Everything the humans were doing was technically within regulations. They were not breaking any laws or causing any security problems, but they were definitely causing something Quiddle could not identify in her reports: happiness. The situation became more complicated when other aliens started requesting transfers to Administrative Hub Kappa 7. Word had spread through Imperial communication networks that something interesting was happening on a routine processing station. Scientists wanted to work with Dr. Kexanar on his new time manipulation research. Engineers wanted to join TechVor's energy art projects. Cultural specialists wanted to help Dr. Yentala create more gallery exhibitions. For the first time in its 60-year history, Administrative Hub Kappa 7 had a waiting list of people who wanted to work there. But the real change came when Jake Morrison made an observation that would alter the course of galactic history. Jake had been watching the aliens for weeks, seeing how they responded to human enthusiasm. He noticed that the younger aliens adapted quickly to the new atmosphere of curiosity and excitement. But older aliens, especially those in leadership positions, seemed confused and sometimes resistant to change. He mentioned this to Dr. Kexnar during one of their daily conversations. "The young ones learn fast," Jake said. "But the older aliens seem stuck in old patterns." Dr. Kexnar considered this. Age and experience are highly valued in Imperial society. Older citizens have lived through more situations and are considered wiser. Young citizens are expected to learn from their elders and follow established protocols. But what if the established protocols are wrong? Jake asked. What if there are better ways to do things? Dr. Kexnar looked shocked. The protocols have been refined over thousands of years. They represent the accumulated wisdom of galactic civilization. Maybe, Jake said. Or maybe they represent thousands of years of doing the same thing because nobody questioned whether it was the best way. This conversation bothered Dr. Kexnar more than he expected. He started looking at station operations with new eyes. Were they following protocols because they were the best way to do things, or just because they had always done them that way? He began asking questions. Why did cultural archives focus on preservation instead of experience? Why did research prioritize data collection over discovery? Why did engineering emphasize efficiency over innovation? The answers he got were always the same, because that is how it has always been done. Dr. Kexnar shared his questions with other aliens who had been influenced by the humans. Soon, a small group of station personnel were meeting informally to discuss whether their perfectly efficient system might not be perfectly good. Inspector Quiddle discovered these meetings and finally understood what had been bothering her. The humans were not just making aliens happy. They were making them think. For the first time in Imperial history, citizens were questioning not just how to do their jobs better, but whether their jobs needed to be done differently at all. Quiddle sent an urgent report to Imperial Central Command. She requested immediate guidance on how to handle a situation that had no precedent in Imperial regulations. A species that was accidentally causing other species to think independently. The response came back within hours. Senior Inspector Vaxthul Grend would arrive within the week to evaluate the situation and determine appropriate action. Quiddle looked at the message with mixed feelings. Part of her was relieved that someone else would handle this unprecedented situation. But another part of her, a part that had been growing stronger since the humans arrived, was disappointed. For the first time in her 300-year career, Inspector Quiddle had been enjoying her work, and she suspected that Senior Inspector Grend was coming to put a stop to that enjoyment. The humans had no idea that their simple curiosity and enthusiasm had triggered the first Imperial security alert in 2,000 years. They were too busy planning a music and art festival with their new alien friends to notice the storm clouds gathering on the horizon. But that storm was coming, and it would determine whether the galaxy's newfound sense of wonder would be allowed to grow, or whether it would be quietly and efficiently stamped out in the name of maintaining order. Senior Inspector Vaxthul Grend arrived on Administrative Hub Kappa 7 exactly 7 days after receiving Inspector Quiddle's report. He was a massive alien who looked like a cross between a rhinoceros and a computer, with metal plates covering most of his gray skin and glowing blue circuits running along his arms. Vaxthul had been an Imperial inspector for 800 years. He had investigated rebellions, stopped wars, and maintained order across the galaxy. He had never encountered a problem he could not solve with proper application of Imperial regulations. But when he stepped off his ship, he immediately knew this situation was different. The docking bay was full of music. Not announcement music or background noise, but actual artistic music that aliens were listening to by choice. Workers were humming along while they loaded cargo. Some were even moving in rhythm with the sounds. "What is this?" Vaxthul demanded, as Inspector Quiddle met him at the airlock. The humans suggested background music might make work more pleasant. Quiddle explained nervously. Productivity has actually increased by 12% since implementation. Vaxthul's circuits flashed, red with disapproval. Regulation 847C clearly states that work environments should maintain professional atmosphere. Music is not professional. But, sir, the improved productivity suggests. Productivity is not the issue, Vaxthul interrupted. Order is the issue. Show me to these humans immediately. As they walked through the station, Vaxthul's disapproval grew with every step. Aliens were gathered in small groups, talking excitedly about various projects. The corridors, which should have been efficiently quiet, buzzed with conversation and laughter. Worst of all, nobody seemed to notice or care that a senior inspector was walking among them. They were too busy enjoying themselves to pay proper respect to authority. They found the humans in the Cultural Center, where Amy Walsh was organizing what she called an interspecies art exchange. Aliens from different departments were working together to create combined artworks that mixed various cultural traditions. "This is highly irregular," Vaxthul announced, his voice booming through the gallery. "Citizens should be at their assigned workstations during duty hours." The room fell silent. All eyes turned to the imposing senior inspector. Amy stepped forward, trying to look brave despite being terrified. "We have permission from our department. Supervisors," Amy said, "and everyone here is using personal time or break periods." Vaxthul's circuits flashed brighter red. "Personal time should be used for rest and maintenance, not for frivolous activities." "Art is not frivolous," said Dr. Yentala, surprising everyone including herself by speaking up to a senior inspector. "These activities have increased cultural understanding between species and improved station morale." "Morale is not a concern," Vaxthul replied coldly. "Efficiency and order are concerns. This gathering is disbanded. Return to your stations immediately." The aliens began to leave reluctantly. many looking back at their unfinished artworks with disappointment. Amy felt terrible watching their newfound joy drain away so quickly. Jake Morrison arrived just as the last aliens were leaving. He took one look at the empty gallery and the enormous inspector and understood what had happened. "You must be the senior inspector," Jake said politely. "I'm Captain Jake Morrison. I believe you're here because of us." "Indeed," Vaxthul replied. "Your species has caused significant disruption to station operations. I am here to determine appropriate corrective measures." "What kind of disruption?" Jake asked. "Everything seems to be running better than before. Production is up, morale is improved, and people are working together more effectively." "Working together is not the issue," Vaxthul said. "Citizens working together leads to citizens thinking together, which leads to citizens questioning together. Questioning leads to instability." Jake stared at the senior inspector. "You're saying that people being happy and creative is a problem?" "Happiness and creativity are acceptable within proper boundaries," Vaxthul explained. "But your influence has caused citizens to exceed those boundaries. They are questioning established procedures, proposing unauthorized changes, and prioritizing personal satisfaction over duty. And that's bad because—" Jake prompted. Vaxthul's circuits pulsed with what might have been frustration. "Because the Galactic Empire has maintained peace and prosperity for 12,000 years through order and stability. Citizens who question authority threaten that stability." "But what if they're questioning authority because they have better ideas?" Jake asked. "There are no better ideas," Vaxthul stated firmly. "Current procedures represent 12,000 years of refined efficiency. Improvement is impossible." Jake felt a chill of understanding. The Empire had not solved all their problems and achieved perfection. They had simply decided to stop trying to improve and declared their current state good enough. Over the next 3 days, Vaxthul conducted interviews with every alien who had been influenced by human contact. His findings confirmed his worst fears. Dr. Kexnar had begun experimenting with research methods that were not in the approved protocol manual. When asked why, he said he wanted to see what happens. Tekvor had started designing energy systems for artistic rather than practical purposes. When asked to justify this use of resources, he said it made him happy. Dr. Yentala had begun reorganizing the cultural archives to emphasize experience over preservation. When asked about regulations, she said maybe the regulations were wrong. Most troubling of all, these infected aliens were influencing others. Citizens who had never questioned anything in their lives were suddenly asking why things were done certain ways. The contamination was spreading. Vaxthul's solution was simple and final. The humans would be immediately returned to their home world, and all aliens who had been influenced by human contact would be transferred to different stations. The infection of independent thinking would be contained before it could spread further. He called a station-wide meeting to announce his decision. The main auditorium was packed. Word had spread that the senior inspector was going to make an announcement about the humans, and everyone wanted to hear what would happen to their new friends. "Citizens of Administrative Hub Kappa 7, Vaxthul began, his voice echoing through the chamber. "After thorough investigation, I have determined that the human presence on this station represents a threat to Imperial stability. Effective immediately, all humans will be returned to their home world, and affected personnel will be reassigned." The reaction was not what Vaxthul expected. Instead of accepting his decision with respectful silence, the audience erupted in protests. "The humans have not done anything wrong," called out Dr. Kexnar. They have made our work better and more meaningful, added Tech 4. Why should asking questions be considered dangerous? Demanded Dr. Yentala. Vaxthul's circuits blazed. Red with alarm, citizens were openly questioning a senior inspector's decision. This had never happened in his 800 years of service. Order! He bellowed. Citizens do not question Imperial decisions. Return to your stations immediately. But nobody moved. The aliens sat in their seats, looking at Vaxthul with expressions he had never seen before. They were not afraid of him. They were disappointed in him. Jake Morrison stood up slowly. Senior Inspector, may I ask you a question? You may not, Vaxthul snapped. I'll ask anyway, Jake said calmly. When was the last time you were excited about anything? The question caught Vaxthul completely off guard. Excitement is irrelevant to duty. When was the last time you looked forward to tomorrow? Jake continued. When was the last time you learned something that made you happy? When was the last time you felt like your life had meaning beyond just following procedures? Vaxthul stared at the small human. These were questions he had never considered, questions that had no answers in any regulation manual. You have built a perfect civilization, Jake continued. No war, no poverty, no suffering. But you have also built a civilization with no joy, no growth, no hope. You have achieved stability by giving up everything that makes life worth living. Life is worth living when it is orderly and predictable, Vaxthul replied, but his voice lacked its usual confidence. Is it? Jake asked. Look around this room. Really look at these people. For the first time in centuries, they are excited about their lives. They are discovering new things, creating beautiful art, working together on projects they care about. Are you really going to take that away from them because it doesn't fit your regulations? Vaxthul looked around the auditorium. Every alien face was turned toward him, and he could see something in their expressions that had been missing from Imperial citizens for thousands of years. Hope. For 800 years, Vaxthul had maintained order by enforcing regulations. But regulations existed to serve citizens, not the other way around. And these citizens were happier and more productive than any he had ever seen. The senior inspector's circuits dimmed from red to yellow as he struggled with thoughts he had never allowed himself to think. What you are suggesting, Vaxthul said slowly, would require changing fundamental Imperial policies. Yes, Jake agreed. It would. The auditorium held its breath as Vaxthul made the most difficult decision of his 800-year career. Need to consult with Imperial Central Command, he announced finally, until I receive further instructions. While Senior Inspector Vaxthul waited for orders from Imperial Central Command, something unexpected happened. News about the humans and their effect on Administrative Hub Kappa 7 began spreading across the galaxy. It started with routine communication between stations. Engineers talked to other engineers about Tech 4's amazing energy art projects. Scientists shared Dr. Kexnar's new research methods. Cultural workers discussed Dr. Yentala's revolutionary gallery exhibitions. Within a week, requests started coming in from across the Empire. Scientists wanted to visit the station to see the new research techniques. Engineers requested transfers to work on innovative energy applications. Cultural specialists applied for positions in the Experimental Archive program. But the most surprising requests came from ordinary citizens. Thousands of aliens applied for tourist permits to visit Administrative Hub Kappa 7. They had heard about a place where people were excited about their work and wanted to see what that looked like. Inspector, Quiddle was overwhelmed by the communication traffic. Her small administrative station had become the most requested destination in the Empire. "We have received 47,000 visitor applications in the past 3 days," she reported to Vaxthul. "That is more than our total population capacity." Vaxthul's circuits flashed yellow with confusion. "Why do so many citizens want to visit a routine administrative station?" "They want to experience what they call human enthusiasm," Quiddle explained. "Citizens across the galaxy are saying they feel empty. They want to know what it feels like to be excited about something." This was not what Vaxthul had expected. He had thought the human influence was a local problem that could be contained. Instead, it was revealing that the entire empire had a problem they had never recognized. Citizens everywhere were realizing that their perfect lives felt hollow. They had everything they needed, but nothing they wanted. They existed comfortably, but did not truly live. The situation became even more complicated when responses started coming back from Imperial Central Command. Instead of clear orders, Vaxthul received questions. "Define the nature of the threat posed by human influence," read one message. "Specify what laws or regulations have been violated," read another. "Explain why increased productivity and citizen satisfaction constitute a security risk," read a third. Vaxthul realized he was facing an impossible problem. The humans had not broken any laws. They had not caused any harm. They had actually improved every measurable aspect of station operations. The only thing they had done wrong was make people happy. But according to Imperial philosophy, making people too happy was dangerous because happy people might want to change things. And change was the enemy of stability. Vaxthul spent 3 sleepless days writing reports, trying to explain to his superiors why happiness was a threat to galactic civilization. The more he wrote, the less sense it made, even to himself. Meanwhile, Jake Morrison and his crew continued their daily activities, unaware that they had triggered a galaxy-wide crisis. They were too busy helping their alien friends with various projects. Sam Rodriguez was working with Techvor to design what they called wonder machines, devices that used excess energy to create beautiful but completely unnecessary effects. Their latest project was a device that made flowers out of light that danced through the air. "Why are we building this?" Techvor asked as they calibrated the photon generators. "Because it's beautiful," Sam replied. "Because it will make people smile. Because we can." Techvor had spent 40 years building practical machines that served specific functions. Building something just because it was beautiful felt strange and wonderful. Dr. Lisa Carter was collaborating with Dr. Kexnar on research that had no practical application but satisfied pure curiosity. They were studying how different species experienced the color blue, not because it would solve any problems, but because they wanted to understand how consciousness worked across different types of minds. "This research will not lead to any useful technology," Dr. Kexnar warned her. "Good," Lisa said cheerfully. "The best research is useless. That's how you know you're discovering something truly new instead of just improving something old." Amy Walsh had started what she called story circles, where aliens from different species shared traditional tales from their home worlds. The Sci-Fi stories were not important cultural artifacts that needed to be preserved. They were just stories that people told because they were entertaining. "My grandmother used to tell this story about a foolish young Kextar who tried to swim to the moon, shared a maintenance worker during one session. It is not an important story, but it always made me laugh." "That's the best kind of story," Amy said. "Stories that exist just to bring joy." These simple activities were having profound effects on the aliens who participated. For the first time in their lives, they were doing things not because they had to, but because they wanted to. Not because it was efficient or necessary, but because it was meaningful to them personally. As word spread across the galaxy, more and more citizens began asking dangerous questions. Why did they spend their entire lives following routines that brought them no satisfaction? Why was stability more important than happiness? Why was efficiency valued more than meaning? On his 8th day at the station, Vax Thul received a message that changed everything. Grand Administrator Kelthis Vorn, the highest authority in the Galactic Empire, was coming to personally investigate the situation. Grand Administrator Vorn had ruled the Empire for 800 years. She had seen the rise and fall of thousands of species, survived 3 galactic wars, and guided the Empire through its golden age of peace and prosperity. She was the ultimate authority on imperial law and order. She was also, according to rumor, the most emotionally distant being in the galaxy. Some said she had voluntarily removed her capacity for feeling to better serve the Empire with pure logic. When Vax Thul received word of her arrival, his circuits went completely dark with fear. Grand Administrator Vorn, coming to investigate, meant this situation was now considered a potential threat to the Empire itself. But as Vax Thul prepared for her arrival, he found himself wondering about something Jake Morrison had asked him. When was the last time he had been excited about anything? The answer troubled him. It had been so long that he could not remember. Centuries, perhaps. Maybe longer. For 800 years, Vax Thul had dedicated his existence to maintaining imperial order. He had been efficient, dutiful, and completely loyal. But he had never once felt joy in his service. Looking around Administrative Hub Kappa 7, he could see that every alien touched by human influence was more alive than they had been before. They worked harder, created more, and contributed better to their community. The only difference was that they enjoyed doing it. Was enjoyment really such a dangerous thing? Vax Thul was still pondering this question when Grand Administrator Vorn's massive flagship appeared outside the station. The ship was the size of a small moon and contained enough firepower to destroy entire star systems. It was a subtle reminder of the power behind imperial authority. When the Grand Administrator docked, the entire station fell silent. Citizens watched from windows as the most powerful being in the galaxy walked through their corridors, flanked by an honor guard of the Empire's most elite soldiers. Grand Administrator Vorn stood nearly 12 feet tall, with silver skin and eyes that glowed like stars. She wore robes that seemed to be made of liquid darkness, and her presence made the air itself feel heavy with authority. She had come to decide the fate of humanity, and unknowingly, the future of the Galactic Empire itself. Jake. Morrison watched her approach through the Cultural Center's main window. He had never seen anything so imposing in his life. But he had also never backed down from a challenge, and he was not about to start now. "Well," Jake said to his crew, "I guess we're about to find out if the galaxy is ready for a little change." Outside, Grand Administrator Vorn stepped into the station that had become the center of a galactic controversy. She had come expecting to find chaos and rebellion. Instead, she found something she had not experienced in 800 years of rule. She found herself curious about what she would discover next. And for the first time since taking power, Vorn realized she was looking forward to a conversation. Grand Administrator Kelthis Vorn walked through Administrative Hub Kappa 7 with the measured steps of someone who had ruled a galaxy for 8 centuries. Behind her, Senior Inspector Vaxthul and Inspector Quiddle followed nervously, unsure what the supreme ruler of the Empire would make of what she found. The first thing Vorn noticed was the sound. Imperial stations were supposed to operate in efficient silence, broken only by necessary announcements and equipment noise. But this station hummed with conversation, laughter, and something else she had not heard in centuries: music. "Explain the audio irregularities," Vorn commanded in a voice that could have frozen stars. The human suggested that background music might improve work efficiency, Quiddle explained quickly. Productivity measurements support this hypothesis. Vorn stopped walking. You implemented procedural changes based on suggestions from a Level 9 Protectorate species? The changes produced measurable improvements in all operational categories, Vaxthul said, surprising himself by defending the decision. For 800 years, Vorn had been the ultimate authority on what was and was not acceptable in Imperial society. No one had ever suggested that her carefully designed systems could be improved by primitive aliens who had just discovered space travel. They continued through the station, and Vorn observed citizens behaving in ways that contradicted everything she understood about proper Imperial conduct. Aliens from different departments were working together on projects that served no official function. Workers were decorating their stations with artistic objects that had no practical purpose. Citizens were gathering in groups to share stories and create things together. Most disturbing of all, when citizens saw the Grand Administrator approaching, they did not immediately stop their activities and assume positions of respectful attention. They acknowledged her presence politely, then returned to their work with obvious enthusiasm for what they were doing. Citizens are not following proper protocols for senior leadership interaction, Vorn observed. They are too excited about their projects to be properly intimidated, Quiddle admitted. Vorn had ruled through a combination of respect, fear, and the absolute certainty that she knew what was best for galactic civilization. Citizens who were too excited to be intimidated represented a fundamental challenge to Imperial authority. They found the humans in the main research lab, where Dr. Kexnar was excitedly showing Dr. Lisa Carter the results of their latest experiment. Jake Morrison, Sam Rodriguez, and Amy Walsh were clustered around a holographic display that showed swirling patterns of light and color. "Grand Administrator," Dr. Kexnar said when he noticed her arrival. "Perfect timing. We just achieved successful localized time dilation on a microscopic scale. Look at this." He gestured enthusiastically at the display, completely forgetting that he was supposed to be terrified of the most powerful being in the galaxy. "We created a pocket of space where time moves at half the normal rate. The applications for research and art and personal experience could be revolutionary." Vorn stared at the scientist who was talking to her like an excited colleague instead of a terrified subordinate. "You achieved localized time manipulation?" "Yes," Dr. Kexnar said proudly. "Lisa suggested we approach the problem backwards, starting with the desired result instead of following established research protocols. It worked perfectly." "Lisa!" Vorn turned her star-bright eyes toward the human scientist. "You suggested modifications to Imperial research methodology?" Lisa Carter felt like a mouse facing a dragon, but she had never been one to back down from a conversation about science. "I just asked why they were doing things in a certain order. When Dr. Kexnar explained the reasons, we realized that some of the steps were only there because that was how research had always been done, not because they were actually necessary." "You questioned established Imperial procedures?" Vorn asked, her voice carrying a dangerous edge. I questioned whether they were the best way to get results, Lisa replied. And it turns out they weren't. For 800 years, no one had suggested that Kelthis Vorn's imperial systems were anything less than perfect. The idea that primitive humans could improve upon millennium-old protocols was almost incomprehensible. Show me, Vorn commanded. Dr. Kexnar began explaining their research process, but instead of the dry, technical presentation that Imperial officials expected, he spoke with passion and excitement about the joy of discovery. He described how working with humans had reminded him why he had become a scientist in the first place. As he talked, other aliens gathered around to listen. Techvor arrived with Sam Rodriguez to show off their latest energy art project. Dr. Yentala brought examples of the cultural fusion artworks that had emerged from Amy's story circles. Soon, Grand Administrator Vorn found herself surrounded by citizens who were eager to share their work, not because they were ordered to, but because they were proud of what they had accomplished. For the first time in centuries, Vorn was hearing Imperial citizens express genuine enthusiasm for their lives. They were not just performing their duties efficiently. They were finding meaning and joy in their contributions to society. Why are you showing me these things? Vorn asked the gathered crowd. Because they are wonderful, said Dr. Yentala simply. Because we are proud of what we have created. Because we want to share the happiness we have found. Vorn looked around at the faces surrounding her. Every alien present was more alive than any Imperial citizen she had seen in her entire reign. Their eyes were bright with curiosity and purpose. They moved with energy and spoke with passion. And yet, according to Imperial philosophy, what they were doing was dangerous to galactic stability. You believe that happiness and creativity should take precedence over order and efficiency? Vorn asked. Why can't we have both? Jake Morrison spoke up for the first time. Look around. These people are more productive than ever. They are working together better than ever. They are contributing more to society than ever. The only difference is that they are enjoying it. Enjoyment is not the purpose of existence. Vorn stated, the purpose of existence is stability, prosperity, and peace for all citizens. But what's the point of stability and prosperity if no one is happy? Jake asked. You have built a perfect civilization where everyone has everything they need and no one has anything they want. You have solved all the problems except the most important one, making life worth living. Vorn stared at the small human who dared to suggest that her 800-year reign had missed the most important point of civilization. Life is worth living when it is safe and orderly, she replied, but her voice lacked its usual certainty. Is it? Jake gestured to the aliens around them. Look at these people. Really look at them. When was the last time you saw Imperial citizens this alive? This engaged? This happy? Vorn looked around the group again. She tried to remember the last time she had seen such enthusiasm among her subjects. She tried to remember the last time anyone had spoken to her with excitement instead of fearful respect. She tried to remember the last time she had felt excitement herself. The answer to all these questions was the same. She could not remember. What? You are suggesting, Vorn said slowly, would require fundamental changes to Imperial governance. Citizens who are encouraged to think independently might question authority. They might demand changes. They might destabilize the order that has brought peace to the galaxy. Or, Jake said quietly, they might build something even better. For 800 years, Kelthais Vorn had based her rule on the principle that stability was more important than progress, that order was more valuable than growth, that peace was worth any sacrifice of individual fulfillment. But looking at the citizens around her, she saw people who had found both stability and fulfillment, both order and growth, both peace and joy. "Senior Inspector Vaxthul," Vorn said finally, "what is your assessment of the humans' impact on station operations?" Vaxthul's circuits flickered as he considered his response. For 800 years, he had followed orders without question. But watching the transformation of Administrative Hub Kappa 7 had shown him something he had never expected to see. The possibility that the Empire could be both stable and alive. "Grand Administrator," he said carefully, "the humans have improved every measurable aspect of station performance while simultaneously increasing citizen satisfaction to unprecedented levels. If this constitutes a threat to imperial stability, then perhaps our definition of stability needs to be reconsidered." Vorn's glowing eyes focused on her senior inspector. "You are suggesting that imperial policy should be modified based on the example of 4 primitive humans?" "I am suggesting," Vaxthul said, his circuits glowing brighter than they had in centuries, "that these primitive humans have achieved something we have been trying to accomplish for 12,000 years. They have created a society where citizens are both productive and happy. Perhaps we should learn from them instead of fearing them." Grand Administrator Kelthais Vorn, supreme ruler of a galaxy-spanning empire, stood silent for a long moment. Around her, citizens waited to learn whether their newfound joy would be allowed to continue, or whether they would be forced to return to lives of efficient emptiness. Finally, Vorn spoke. "I will consider your recommendations. In the meantime, 3 days passed before Grand Administrator Kelthais Vorn called for the final meeting that would determine humanity's fate. During those 3 days, she did something she had not done in 800 years of rule. She explored her own empire. As an ordinary citizen, instead of as a supreme authority, Vorn walked through Administrative Hub Kappa 7 without her honor guard, without her ceremonial robes, without any of the symbols that marked her as the most powerful being in the galaxy. She wanted to see what her citizens were really like when they were not performing for their ruler. What she found amazed her. In the engineering section, she watched Sam Rodriguez teaching a group of young aliens how to build what he called happiness machines, devices that served no practical purpose except to create beauty and wonder. The young engineers were more excited about these pointless projects than she had ever seen them about their official duties. "Why do you build things that have no function?" Vorn asked one of the engineers. "Because they have the most important function of all," the young alien replied. "They make people smile." In the Cultural Center, Vorn observed Amy Walsh leading a discussion about art and meaning between species who had never talked to each other before. Citizens who had worked on the same station for decades were discovering they had shared interests and dreams. "Before the humans came, I thought art was just decoration," admitted a maintenance worker. "Now I understand that art is how we share our souls with each other." In the research lab, Vorn watched Dr. Lisa Carter and Dr. Kexnar working together on experiments that followed no established protocols. They were investigating questions simply because they wanted to know the answers, not because the knowledge would serve any official purpose. "The best discoveries come from curiosity, not from duty," Dr. Kexnar explained to his research team. "The humans taught me that wondering what if is more important than knowing how to." But the most significant moment came when Vorn encountered Captain Jake Morrison in the station's observation deck, looking out at the stars. "Do you ever regret leaving your homeworld?" Vorn asked, joining him at the viewing window. Jake smiled. "Every day. Earth is beautiful and I miss it terribly. But I don't regret coming here." "Why not?" "You have caused nothing but trouble for yourselves." "Because we have learned something incredible," Jake replied. "We learned that the universe is not empty and scary. It's full of amazing people who just forgot how to be amazed. We learned that being small in a big galaxy doesn't make us unimportant. It makes us part of something wonderful." Vorn stared out at the stars she had ruled for 8 centuries. "You see wonder where I see responsibility. You see opportunity where I see potential problems. How can the same galaxy look so different to us? Because you have been carrying the weight of the whole galaxy on your shoulders for so long that you forgot to look up and see how beautiful it is," Jake said gently. "You have spent 800 years taking care of everyone else. When was the last time someone took care of you?" For the first time in centuries, Kelthis Vorn felt something, crack in the walls she had built around her heart. She had dedicated her existence to serving others, but she had forgotten that she was someone who deserved care too. "What would you do if you were in my position?" Vorn asked. Jake thought carefully before answering. "I would ask myself what kind of galaxy I want to live in, one where people are safe but empty, or one where people are alive and growing and discovering new ways to be happy together? What if encouraging happiness leads to chaos? What if giving people freedom makes them dangerous?" "Then you deal with problems as they come," Jake said simply. "But you don't prevent all possible future problems by making sure nothing interesting ever happens. That's not protecting people. That's burying them alive." That evening, Vorn called for the meeting that would decide everything. The main auditorium was packed with citizens from across the station. Word had spread that the Grand Administrator would announce her final decision about the humans and about the future of the activities they had inspired. Vorn stood at the podium, looking out at faces that showed more life and hope than she had seen in her entire reign. These citizens were no longer just dutiful subjects performing their assigned roles. They were individuals with dreams and passions and curiosity about the universe around them. "Citizens of the Galactic Empire," Vorn began, her voice echoing through the chamber. "I have spent 3 days observing the changes that have occurred on this station since the arrival of the humans. I have seen increased productivity, improved cooperation between species, breakthrough discoveries in multiple scientific fields, and unprecedented levels of citizen satisfaction." She paused, looking around the room. "I have also seen citizens questioning established procedures, proposing unauthorized changes, and prioritizing personal fulfillment alongside duty to the Empire." The room held its breath. This sounded like the beginning of a condemnation. "For 12,000 years," Vorn continued, "the Galactic Empire has maintained peace and prosperity through order and stability. We have eliminated war, poverty, disease, and conflict. We have achieved everything we set out to accomplish." Another pause. Jake Morrison felt his heart sinking. "But in achieving perfection, we made a critical error. We forgot that the purpose of civilization is not just to keep people alive and safe. The purpose of civilization is to help people live lives worth living." Murmurs of surprise rippled through the audience. The humans have reminded us of something we lost somewhere in our 12,000 years of success: the joy of discovery, the pleasure of creation. the happiness that comes from working together on something meaningful. Vorn's voice grew stronger. Therefore, I am announcing the creation of a new imperial policy. From this day forward, the Galactic Empire will actively encourage citizen initiatives that promote creativity, curiosity, and personal fulfillment alongside our traditional values of stability and efficiency. The auditorium erupted in cheers, but Vorn held up her hand for silence. Furthermore, I am creating a new classification for species that demonstrate exceptional ability to inspire positive change in galactic society. Humanity will be designated as the first cultural catalyst species, with the mission of traveling throughout the Empire to help other worlds rediscover the joy and wonder that make life meaningful. Dr. Kexnar jumped to his feet. Does this mean we can continue our research projects? It means, Vorn replied with something that might have been a smile, that we want you to teach other worlds how to ask better questions. Tekvor raised his hand. Can we keep building happiness machines? It means we want every world in the Empire to have citizens who know how to create beauty for its own sake. Amy Walsh stood up. Can we keep having cultural exchanges and art festivals? It means we want every species in the galaxy to remember that they have something unique and wonderful to share with their neighbors. Jake Morrison rose from his seat. Grand Administrator, are you saying that the Empire is going to change its fundamental approach to governance? Vorn looked directly at him. I am saying that 4 humans from a small blue planet reminded the galaxy's greatest civilization that we had forgotten the most important thing. Happiness is not the enemy of order. Joy is not the opposite of stability. Wonder is not a threat to peace. She paused, then added quietly, I am also saying that for the first time in 800 years, I am looking forward to tomorrow. The celebration that followed lasted for 3 days. Citizens across the galaxy heard about the new imperial policy and began organizing their own creativity and discovery projects. Applications poured in from worlds that wanted to host human, cultural catalyst teams. But perhaps the most significant change was in Grand Administrator Vorn herself. She began taking time each day to experience the art and music and discoveries that her citizens were creating. She started asking questions driven by curiosity rather than duty. She remembered what it felt like to be amazed by the universe. 6 months later, Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of a new ship called the Wonder, preparing to depart for the Andromeda sector with his expanded crew of humans and aliens. Their mission was simple: visit worlds throughout the Empire and help citizens rediscover the joy of being alive. Ready for departure, Captain, reported Sam Rodriguez from the engineering station he had designed to include both maximum efficiency and maximum fun. All cultural exchange materials loaded and secured, added Amy Walsh, who had become the Empire's first director of interspecies happiness. Research equipment configured for maximum curiosity potential, announced Dr. Lisa Carter, now officially titled as Chief Wonder Officer. Jake looked around at his crew, which now included Dr. Kexanar, Tekvor, Dr. Yentala, and dozens of other aliens who had learned to see the universe through human eyes. They were no longer just a small group of humans who had stumbled into a galactic empire. They were the beginning of a movement that would transform an entire galaxy. Take us out, Jake ordered. Let's go remind the universe how to be amazing. As the Wonder jumped to hyperspace, carrying its crew toward new worlds and new adventures, Administrative Hub Kappa 7 continued its work. But now the routine tasks of administration were accompanied by laughter, music, and the constant hum of citizens who were excited about their lives.